The gunshot that killed Gabriel Owens's father came with a lecture about how women should know their place, and she had been proving men wrong ever since. Standing in the dusty general store in Ogden, Utah in 1878, she felt the familiar prickle of irritation as Mrs. Henderson clutched her pearls and gasped at Gabriel's suggestion that the town council should allow women to attend meetings. "It is simply not proper," Mrs. Henderson insisted, her face turning an unfortunate shade of crimson. "What would people think? A young woman of 22 should be concerning herself with marriage prospects, not politics and town governance." Gabriel straightened her spine, her green eyes flashing with determination. "I think people would appreciate having half the population represented in decisions that affect us all. The new water system will impact every household, yet only men get to voice their opinions on where the pipes should run." The older woman shook her head so vigorously that her bonnet threatened to fly off. "This is exactly why you remain unmarried, Miss Owens. Men do not want wives who contradict them at every turn. They want gentle, agreeable companions who understand their proper role." "Then I suppose I shall remain unmarried," Gabriel replied, gathering her purchases with practiced efficiency. "I would rather speak my mind than bite my tongue for the sake of landing a husband who cannot handle an honest conversation." She swept out of the store, her burgundy skirts swishing against her boots, and nearly collided with a tall figure on the wooden sidewalk. Strong hands caught her arms, steadying her, and she found herself looking up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. They belonged to a man who stood well over 6 feet, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar of his worn shirt. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy, denim pants, a leather vest, and a hat that had seen better days. "My apologies, miss," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in her chest. "I should watch where I am walking." "No harm done," Gabriel replied, acutely aware that his hands still held her arms. She stepped back and he released her immediately, though something in his expression suggested he had been reluctant to do so. "You are Miss Owens, correct? The schoolteacher's daughter." "I am Gabriel Owens, yes. My father was the schoolteacher before he passed 3 years ago. I teach now." She studied him with open curiosity, noting the calluses on his hands and the genuine warmth in his smile. "I do not believe we have met. Isaac Northwood. I just bought the old Patterson ranch east of town. Been working to get it running properly again after it sat empty for 2 years. He shifted his weight, and she noticed he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. "I could not help but overhear what you said in there, about the town council meetings." Gabriel braced herself for another lecture. "And I suppose you have opinions about a woman's place as well." To her surprise, Isaac laughed, a rich sound that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I suppose I do. I think any person affected by a decision should have a say in it. Seems like common sense to me. My mother ran our ranch in Colorado after my father died, and she made better decisions than most of the men in the county. She never hesitated to speak her mind, and everyone respected her for it." Gabriel felt her defensive posture soften slightly. "That is a refreshing perspective, Mr. Northwood. Most men in this town seem to believe women should be seen and not heard. Most men in this town are fools, then." Isaac adjusted his hat, and Gabriel noticed the way the afternoon sun caught the strong line of his jaw. "If you will excuse my bluntness, Miss Owens, but a partner who cannot speak her mind freely is not much of a partner at all. I would want someone who could tell me when I am being an idiot, not someone who just agrees with everything I say." "Your future wife will be a fortunate woman," Gabriel said, meaning it sincerely. She had never heard a man express such sentiments before. Something flickered in Isaac's eyes, something that made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. I hope she will think so. Though I confess, I have not had much luck finding a woman who interests me. Most of the ladies I have met seem more interested in saying what they think I want to hear than in having actual conversations. Before Gabriel could respond, Mrs. Henderson emerged from the store, took one look at them standing together, and made a disapproving sound in the back of her throat. Miss Owens, I do hope you are not making a spectacle of yourself by engaging in improper conversation on the public street. Gabriel felt her temper flare, but Isaac spoke before she could. Mrs. Henderson, is it not? I was just asking Miss Owens for directions to the feed store. She has been most helpful. This town is fortunate to have such a knowledgeable resident. The older woman looked somewhat mollified, though suspicion still lingered in her expression. Well, the feed store is 2 blocks down on the left. Good day. She hurried away, no doubt eager to spread gossip about seeing Gabriel talking to the new rancher. You did not need to do that, Gabriel said quietly. Lie to protect my reputation, I mean. I did not lie, Isaac replied with a slight smile. I do need to go to the feed store and you could have given me directions. I simply allowed her to assume that was the topic of our conversation. He paused, then added, though I confess I am more interested in continuing our actual conversation. Would you allow me to walk you home, Miss Owens? Unless that would cause you problems with the gossips. Gabriel considered refusing on principle. She had spent years carefully maintaining her independence, never giving anyone reason to think she needed or wanted male attention. But there was something genuine in Isaac's expression, something that made her want to keep talking to him. I think I can survive a bit of gossip, she said finally. And please call me Gabriel. Miss Owens makes me feel like a spinster schoolmarm. Gabriel, he repeated, testing the name. That is unusual, I like it. They walked together through the dusty streets of Ogden, past the saloon where piano music drifted through the swinging doors, past the blacksmith shop where the ring of hammer on anvil provided a steady rhythm. Gabriel found herself relaxing in Isaac's presence in a way she rarely did with men. He asked her questions and actually listened to her answers, his attention focused entirely on her words rather than on how she looked or whether she was being appropriately feminine. So you have been running the school for 3 years? He asked as they turned down the residential street where her small house stood. Yes, though it was a battle to convince the town council to allow it. They wanted to hire a man from Salt Lake City, but I pointed out that I had been helping my father teach for years and knew every student in town. Eventually, they agreed to give me a trial period, and now they admit I do a competent job, though they make sure to remind me regularly that I should not get too comfortable in case they find a male teacher who wants the position. Isaac's expression darkened slightly. That hardly seems fair. You have proven yourself capable. Fairness has little to do with it, I am afraid. The council believes men are inherently better suited for positions of authority. Gabriel stopped in front of her white picket fence, beyond which her modest home sat surrounded by a carefully tended garden. This is where I live. Thank you for the escort, Mr. Northwood. Isaac, he corrected gently. And thank you for the company. I wonder, Gabriel, would you allow me to call on you? Properly, I mean. I find I would very much like to continue our conversation. Gabriel's first instinct was to refuse. She had built a life for herself that did not include the complications of courtship or the inevitable disappointment of discovering that even seemingly progressive men reverted to traditional expectations once they felt secure in a woman's affections. But when she looked into Isaac's blue eyes, she saw no deception there, only honest interest and a hint of nervousness that made him seem unexpectedly vulnerable. I suppose one visit would be acceptable, she heard herself say. Though I should warn you, Isaac, I am not going to pretend to be someone I am not. If you are hoping I will suddenly become demure and agreeable, you will be sorely disappointed." His smile was brilliant. "Gabriel, I would be disappointed if you became anyone other than exactly who you are. How about Sunday afternoon? I could bring a picnic and we could take a walk up into the foothills, unless you would prefer something more conventional." "A picnic sounds lovely," Gabriel admitted. "I will look forward to it." She watched him walk away, his long strides eating up the distance, and felt a flutter of something she had not experienced in years. Hope, perhaps, or anticipation. She firmly reminded herself not to get carried away. One pleasant conversation did not mean Isaac Northwood was truly different from other men. Time would tell whether his progressive words matched his actual beliefs. The next few days passed slowly, with Gabriel finding her thoughts drifting to Isaac at inconvenient moments. She would be in the middle of teaching arithmetic, and suddenly remember the way he had laughed, or the genuine interest in his eyes as he listened to her opinions. It was disconcerting and slightly annoying, but also undeniably pleasant. Sunday morning, she took extra care with her appearance, choosing her best day dress in deep green cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. She told herself it was simply a matter of looking presentable, not any particular desire to impress Isaac, but she knew she was lying. When he arrived precisely at 1 o'clock, carrying a wicker basket and wearing a clean shirt that emphasized his broad shoulders, her heart did an unexpected little skip. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you. You look quite nice yourself." She collected her bonnet and a shawl, locked her door, and allowed him to help her into his wagon. The seat was clean, she noticed, and he had clearly made an effort to brush down the horse, a sturdy bay mare with intelligent eyes. As they drove out of town toward the foothills that rose dramatically to the east, Gabriel felt some of her nervousness fade. The late spring afternoon was perfect, with wildflowers carpeting the meadows in shades of purple and gold. Birds sang in the cottonwood trees that lined the creek, and the mountains beyond still wore caps of snow on their highest peaks. "Tell me about your ranch," Gabriel said, as Isaac guided the wagon along a narrow trail. The Patterson place had been empty for quite some time. "It must need considerable work." "That is an understatement," Isaac replied with a rueful laugh. "The house is sound enough, but the barn had a hole in the roof, half the fences were down, and the well needed to be dug deeper. I have been working dawn to dusk for the past 6 weeks just to get things to a point where I can bring in cattle." He glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "I grew up on a ranch in Colorado near Denver. When my father died 5 years ago, my mother ran it for 3 years before my younger brother was old enough to take over. I had always assumed I would inherit, being the eldest, but my mother sat me down one day and asked me what I truly wanted." "And what did you want?" "My own place. A fresh start. I love my family, but I was tired of following paths already laid down. I wanted to build something myself, make my own decisions and my own mistakes." He smiled slightly. "So I sold my share to my brother, took the money and started looking for land. When I found the Patterson Ranch, I knew it was right. Good water, decent grazing, close enough to town but not too close." Gabriel understood that impulse more than she could express. "I think there is something to be said for creating your own path. After my father died, everyone expected me to marry quickly, to find a man who could support me. But I had been helping run the school for years, and I knew I could do the job myself. It was important to me to prove that I did not need rescuing." "Did you ever want to marry?" Isaac asked, then quickly added, "I apologize if that is too personal a question." "No, it is fine. Gabriel considered her answer carefully. I suppose I always thought I might marry eventually if I met someone who valued me as a person rather than as a decorative object or a housekeeper. But most of the men who courted me made it clear they expected me to give up teaching, to focus entirely on home and family. When I refused, they moved on to more amenable prospects. That is their loss, Isaac said firmly. He pulled the wagon to a stop near a grove of aspen trees, where a small stream bubbled over smooth rocks. This seemed like a good spot for a picnic. What do you think? It is perfect. He helped her down from the wagon, his hands warm and steady on her waist, and she was acutely aware of his nearness. They spread a blanket on the grass, and Isaac unpacked the basket to reveal fried chicken, fresh bread, cheese, apples, and a jar of lemonade. It was simple fare, but Gabriel found she was genuinely hungry. "Did you make all this yourself?" she asked, impressed. "I did. My mother insisted all her children learn to cook. She said she was not raising sons who would starve without a woman to feed them, or daughters who would be trapped in bad situations because they could not support themselves." Isaac settled onto the blanket across from her, his long legs stretched out. "She is a remarkable woman. I think you would like her." They ate and talked, the conversation flowing easily from topic to topic. Isaac told her about growing up on the ranch, about helping his mother after his father's death, about his brother and two sisters. Gabriel found herself sharing stories about her own childhood, about her father's progressive views on education and women's rights, about the challenges of teaching children whose parents sometimes resented her authority. "There is a boy in my class, Tommy Henderson, Mrs. Henderson's grandson," Gabriel explained. "He is bright but struggles with reading. I have been working with him extra after school and he has made tremendous progress. But his grandmother insists that all he needs is more discipline, that I am coddling him. She actually suggested I should whip him to make him focus better." Isaac's expression turned incredulous. "That is absurd. Beating a child does not make him learn better." "Exactly what I told her. But she believes I am too soft, too emotional, too much of a woman to handle the job properly." Gabriel bit into an apple with perhaps more force than necessary. "Sometimes I wonder if it is worth the constant battle. The council scrutinizes everything I do, waiting for me to fail so they can justify replacing me with a man. Would you give it up if the battle became too much?" Gabriel considered this seriously. "No, I do not think I could. Those children deserve a good education, and I know I am providing that. If I quit, I would be proving the council right, confirming their belief that women cannot handle responsibility. I refuse to give them that satisfaction." "Good," Isaac said simply. "The world needs more people willing to stand up for what they believe in, regardless of their gender." The afternoon sun shifted lower, painting everything in golden light. They packed up the picnic remains and walked along the stream, close enough that their arms occasionally brushed. Gabriel found herself hyper-aware of Isaac's presence, of the way he matched his longer stride to hers, of how he pointed out interesting rocks and plants with genuine enthusiasm. "What made you decide to come to Ogden specifically?" she asked as they paused to watch a deer drink from the stream on the opposite bank. "Honestly, it was somewhat random. I knew I wanted to be in Utah, like the landscape and the climate. I saw the advertisement for the Patterson Ranch and came to investigate. When I arrived in Ogden and saw the town, the mountains, the valleys, it felt right." He glanced at her with a slight smile. "Though I confess, meeting you has made me even more convinced I made the right choice." Gabriel felt warmth spread through her chest, a pleasant flutter that was both exciting and terrifying. "Isaac, I appreciate your company truly, but I need you to understand something. I am not going to change who I am. I will always speak my mind. I will always fight for what I believe in. I cannot and will not be the kind of quiet, obedient woman most men seem to want. Gabriel, look at me." When she met his eyes, she saw nothing but sincerity there. "I do not want you to change. I want exactly who you are. A strong, intelligent, passionate woman who cares about justice and is not afraid to fight for it. The fact that you speak your mind freely is not a flaw. It is one of the things I admire most about you." "You barely know me," she protested, though her heart was racing. "Then I would like to know you better, if you will let me." Before Gabriel could respond, they heard shouts from the direction of town. Isaac immediately tensed, his hand moving instinctively to his side where a pistol would hang if he were wearing a gun belt. The shouts grew louder, and they could see a rider galloping along the main road, heading toward the center of Ogden. "Something is wrong," Isaac said. "We should get back." They hurried to the wagon, and Isaac drove as quickly as he safely could back toward town. As they approached, they could see people gathering in the street near the general store. Gabriel spotted her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, and called out, "What happened? What is going on?" "It is the bank," Mrs. Chen replied, her face pale. "3 men robbed it not 20 minutes ago. They shot Mr. Peters when he tried to stop them. The sheriff has formed a posse, but the robbers have a head start." Gabriel felt sick. Mr. Peters ran the post office and was one of the few men on the town council who had supported her taking over the school. "Is he alive?" "Yes, but badly hurt. Doc Morrison is with him now." Isaac had already pulled the wagon to a stop and was helping Gabriel down. "I should join the posse," he said, "if they need men who can ride and shoot." "Be careful," Gabriel said without thinking, and was startled by the genuine fear she felt at the thought of him riding into danger. They had only just met, yet the idea of something happening to him made her chest tight. He squeezed her hand briefly. "I will be. Can you get home safely?" "Yes, of course. Go." She watched him run toward the sheriff's office, his long legs covering ground quickly, and found herself saying a silent prayer for his safety. The realization that she already cared what happened to this man, that his well-being mattered to her after just a few days, was both wonderful and frightening. The next few hours were tense. Gabriel went to the doctor's office to see if she could help, and found herself assisting Doc Morrison as he worked to remove the bullet from Mr. Peters' shoulder. The older man was unconscious, which was a mercy, and the doctor's hands were steady as he worked. "You have a strong stomach," Doc Morrison commented as Gabriel handed him clean bandages. "Most women would have fainted by now." "My father believed I should learn practical skills," Gabriel replied. "He made sure I knew basic medicine and first aid. He said you never knew when such knowledge might be needed. Wise man, your father. We could use more people who think that way." The doctor stitched the wound closed with practiced efficiency. "There, he should recover, assuming infection does not set in. It will be several weeks before he can use that arm properly, though." Mrs. Peters arrived, tear-stained and frightened, and Gabriel stayed to help settle Mr. Peters in a recovery room and comfort his wife. It was dark before the posse returned, riding slowly back into town with grim faces. Gabriel hurried out to meet them, searching the group for Isaac's tall form. Her heart leaped when she spotted him, apparently unharmed though covered in dust. "Did you catch them?" Someone in the crowd called out. Sheriff Daniels, a grizzled man in his 50s, shook his head. "Lost them in the canyons north of here. They knew the territory too well. We will keep looking, but they could be halfway to Wyoming by now." The crowd dispersed, disappointed and shaken. Gabriel waited as Isaac dismounted and handed his horse to the stable boy. When he saw her, his tired face lit up with a smile that made her breath catch. "You waited," he said, sounding surprised and pleased. "I wanted to make sure you were all right." She looked him over, noting the exhaustion in his eyes. "Are you hurt?" "No, just tired and frustrated." Those men had a good head start, and they clearly had an escape route planned. He ran a hand through his hair, dislodging his hat slightly. "How is Mr. Peters?" "He will live. The bullet is out, and Doc Morrison says he should recover fully with time." "That is good news at least." Isaac glanced around the now mostly empty street, then back at her. "Gabriel, I know it is late, but would you allow me to walk you home? I find I need to see you safely to your door before I can rest." The sentiment was old-fashioned, the kind of protective gesture that usually irritated Gabriel. But coming from Isaac, it felt different. Not like he thought she was helpless, but like he genuinely cared about her well-being. So she nodded and took his offered arm, and they walked through the quiet streets together. "Were you frightened?" she asked. "When you were chasing the robbers, I mean." "A bit," Isaac admitted. "Mostly I was angry. Those men could have killed Mr. Peters, and they did not care. They just wanted money and were willing to hurt anyone who got in their way." He paused. "I kept thinking about you, though. About making sure I made it back safely so I could see you again." Gabriel felt that flutter in her chest again, stronger this time. "Isaac, we have only known each other a few days. You should not be thinking such things." "Why not?" "Because society says I should wait some arbitrary amount of time before admitting I care about you. That seems foolish to me." They had reached her fence, and he turned to face her fully. "Gabriel, I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other. But I also know that I have never met anyone like you. You are brave and intelligent and passionate, and when I am with you, I feel like I can be completely honest about who I am and what I think. That is rare. That is precious. And I am not going to pretend otherwise just because it is not how things are usually done." Gabriel stared at him, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to retreat, to protect herself from the vulnerability of caring too much too quickly. But another part, a stronger part, recognized the truth in his words. She felt it too, this connection, this sense of having found something unexpected and valuable. "I feel it as well," she admitted quietly, "and it terrifies me." "Why?" "Because every man I have ever let myself care about has eventually decided I am too difficult, too opinionated, too much work. They say they admire my independence until they realize I actually mean it, and then they try to change me." She met his eyes, needing him to understand. "I cannot go through that again, Isaac. I cannot let myself care deeply for someone only to discover they want me to be someone else." Isaac reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her hand. "I am not those other men. I do not want to change you. I want to know you exactly as you are, and if you will give me the chance, I will prove it to you." Gabriel looked down at their joined hands, his rough and calloused from hard work, her smaller but equally capable. She thought about the easy conversation they had shared, the way he truly listened when she spoke, the genuine respect in his voice when he talked about his mother and her abilities. Maybe, just maybe, he was different. "All right," she said finally. "But I am going to hold you to that promise, Isaac Northwood. If you start trying to make me into something I am not, I will call you on it immediately. I would expect nothing less." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture that was both courtly and sincere. "Good night, Gabriel. Sleep well." She watched him walk away into the darkness, then let herself into her house. The rooms felt emptier than usual, and she realized she had grown accustomed to living alone, to having only her own company. The thought of letting someone else into her life, into her heart, was both thrilling and intimidating. Over the following weeks, Isaac became a regular presence in Gabriel's life. He called on her several times a week, always respectful of her time and responsibilities. He attended the Sunday church service and sat with her, earning disapproving looks from some of the more traditional townspeople. He showed up at the schoolhouse one afternoon with lumber and tools and spent an entire Saturday repairing the sagging front steps that the town council had been promising to fix for months. "You did not have to do this," Gabriel said, watching him work with efficient, practiced movements. "I know, I wanted to." He looked up at her, squinting against the sun. "Besides, those steps were a hazard. What if one of your students got hurt?" The children were fascinated by Isaac, peppering him with questions about ranch work and horses and whether he had ever fought Indians. Gabriel intervened when the questions became too personal, but Isaac handled the attention with good humor and surprising patience. Tommy Henderson, the boy who struggled with reading, was particularly drawn to Isaac, following him around like a devoted puppy. "Mr. Northwood, do you have cows yet?" Tommy asked, his freckled face earnest. "Not yet, Tommy, but I am planning to buy some next month once I get a few more fences repaired. Can I come see them? I have never been on a real ranch before." Isaac glanced at Gabriel, who nodded permission. "Sure, you can come visit, but only if Miss Owens says your reading has improved enough." Tommy's face fell, and Gabriel hid a smile. "Then I suppose you had better work extra hard on your lessons, Tommy. If you can read through the entire next chapter of your primer without mistakes, I will consider a field trip to Mr. Northwood's ranch." The boy's expression transformed into determination, and he ran back inside, presumably to practice. Isaac chuckled as he returned to his work on the steps. Was that manipulative of me, using a ranch visit to motivate him? "It was brilliant," Gabriel replied honestly. "I have been trying to find something that would inspire Tommy to put in the effort. He is capable of being a good reader, he just needs the right motivation. Like I said, beating him certainly would not help. The boy needs encouragement, not punishment." Isaac hammered in the last nail and stood, testing the steps with his weight. "There, that should hold for a good long while. Thank you truly." The council has been promising to fix those for nearly a year. "The council seems to make a lot of promises they do not keep," Isaac observed, packing up his tools. "Especially when it comes to the school," Gabriel sighed. "They see education as a necessary expense rather than an investment. And they especially resent spending money on a school run by a woman." She sat down on the newly repaired steps, and Isaac joined her. "There is going to be a meeting next week to discuss the budget. I am preparing to fight for new textbooks and a larger woodpile for winter. I know they will argue every penny. Will they let you attend the meeting? No. I have to submit my requests in writing and then they discuss them without me. It is infuriating." Isaac was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "What if you had someone advocate for you? Someone they could not dismiss as easily?" "What do you mean?" "I own property now. That gives me the right to attend council meetings. What if I went and spoke on behalf of the school?" He held up a hand when Gabriel started to protest. "Not because you are incapable, but because they will not let you in the room. I would be serving as your voice, saying exactly what you tell me to say. You would write the speech and I would deliver it." Gabriel considered this. Her pride bristled at the idea of needing a man to speak for her, but her practical side recognized the value of the strategy. "You would truly do that? Advocate for education funding on my behalf, of course. Gabriel, I believe in what you are doing. Those children deserve the best education possible, and you are providing that. If I can help by working within the system's ridiculous restrictions, I will." She leaned against him slightly, a gesture of trust and affection that felt natural despite the brevity of their acquaintance. "Thank you. That means more to me than you know." He put his arm around her shoulders, and they sat together in comfortable silence as the sun began to set. Gabriel felt a sense of contentment she had not experienced in years. With Isaac, she did not have to guard her words or hide her thoughts. She could be completely herself, and he not only accepted it but celebrated it. The following Wednesday, Gabriel sat in her classroom after the students had left and carefully composed her speech for the town council meeting. She laid out specific needs, justified each expense with clear reasoning, and made a compelling case for why investing in education would benefit the entire community. When she finished, she rode out to Isaac's ranch to deliver the speech. The transformation of the property was remarkable. In just 2 months, Isaac had repaired the barn, mended miles of fence, cleaned out the overgrown yards, and brought the house back to life. Gabriel found him working on a new corral, his shirt sleeves rolled up and sweat dampening his hair despite the cool evening air. Gabriel. He set down his tools immediately and came to greet her, his face lighting up with pleasure. "This is a wonderful surprise. I was not expecting you today. I finished the speech for the council meeting. I wanted to give it to you early so you would have time to review it and ask questions if anything is unclear. Come inside. I will make coffee, and we can go over it together." His house was simply furnished but clean and comfortable. Gabriel noticed small touches that showed Isaac's personality. Books stacked on a table, a carefully mended quilt on the sofa, wildflowers in a jar on the windowsill. He made coffee with practiced ease and settled beside her to read through her carefully written arguments. "This is excellent," he said after reading it twice. "Clear, logical, impossible to refute. If they reject this, it will be pure stubbornness rather than legitimate concerns. That is what I am counting on. I want to make it politically difficult for them to say no. If they cannot come up with good reasons to deny the requests, they will look petty and unreasonable." Gabriel sipped her coffee, appreciating the rich flavor. "You make good coffee. One of many skills my mother insisted I learn." He set the speech aside and looked at her seriously. "Gabriel, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you think I am trying to control you by offering to speak at the council meeting? Because if you feel that way at all, I will step back. Your independence is important, and I never want to compromise that." The question caught Gabriel off guard, but she appreciated his directness. "No, I do not feel that way. You are offering to help me work around an unjust system, not trying to take over. There is a difference. If you were telling me what to say or insisting you knew better than I did, that would be controlling. But you are amplifying my voice, not replacing it." Relief washed over Isaac's features. "Good, because I worry sometimes that the line is not always clear. I want to support you without diminishing you, and I am still learning how to do that well. The fact that you think about it, that you question yourself, means you are doing better than most men already." Gabriel set down her coffee cup and reached for his hand. "Isaac, I need to tell you something. I am falling in love with you, and that scares me because I swore I would never let myself be vulnerable like this again. But when I am with you, I do not feel diminished or limited. I feel seen. I feel valued. I feel like I can be entirely myself without apology or explanation." Isaac's grip on her hand tightened, his blue eyes intense with emotion. "I am in love with you too. I think I started falling that first day, when you came out of the general store with fire in your eyes, ready to fight the world for what you believed in. You are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I feel privileged every time you let me into your life." He leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and kissed her with a gentleness that made her heart ache. Gabriel kissed him back, pouring into it all the emotion she had been holding carefully at bay. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "What do we do now?" she whispered. "We keep going forward. Together." Isaac stroked her cheek with his thumb. "Gabriel, I do not want to rush you or pressure you, but I need you to know my intentions. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. And I want that life to include you continuing to teach, to speak your mind, to be exactly who you are. I am not asking you to give up anything. I am asking you to add me to your life as a partner in every sense of the word." Tears stung Gabriel's eyes, but they were happy tears. "I want that too, more than I ever thought possible. Then we will make it happen. But first, let me prove myself to you at that council meeting. Let me show you and everyone else that I mean what I say about supporting strong women who speak their minds." The council meeting took place on Friday evening in the town hall, a squat wooden building that smelled of tobacco and old wood. Gabriel was not allowed inside, but she waited on the steps, pacing nervously as the sun set and lamps were lit throughout the town. Isaac had promised to come find her immediately after the meeting, and she tried not to imagine all the ways it could go wrong. Nearly 2 hours passed before the door finally opened and men began filing out. Gabriel searched their faces, trying to gauge the outcome. Some looked irritated, others thoughtful. Then Isaac emerged, and the grin on his face told her everything she needed to know. "We got it all," he said, pulling her into an exuberant hug right there on the steps, scandalizing several passing townspeople. Every single item approved. The new textbooks, the extra firewood, even the repairs to the roof that you mentioned needed doing eventually. They voted to approve the full budget. Gabriel felt like she might float away with relief and joy. "How? What happened?" "I gave your speech exactly as you wrote it, and it was brilliant. Mr. Peters backed us up, said he had seen the school's condition and agreed improvements were needed." A few council members tried to argue, but Mr. Henderson, of all people, shut them down. "Tommy's grandfather, but he has never supported me before." Apparently, Tommy has been talking nonstop about how much his reading has improved, and how excited he is about the possibility of visiting my ranch. Mr. Henderson stood up and said that any teacher who could motivate his grandson to actually enjoy reading deserved all the support the town could give. Isaac laughed, shaking his head in amazement. It was quite something to witness. "I cannot believe it worked." Gabriel felt tears threatening again, overwhelmed by the victory. "Isaac, thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for fighting for this." "Always," he promised, taking both her hands in his. "Gabriel, I have a question for you, and I know the timing might seem sudden, but after tonight I do not want to wait any longer." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend my life supporting you, arguing with you, learning from you, and loving you?" Gabriel had imagined this moment many times over the years, always picturing herself carefully considering, weighing options, perhaps asking for time to think. But standing there with Isaac, his hands warm around hers and his eyes full of hope and love, she knew there was only one answer possible. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, in full view of anyone who might be passing by, and Gabriel did not care who saw or what they thought. She was in love with a man who valued her mind as much as her heart, who supported her dreams instead of trying to limit them, and who was brave enough to tell the world he wanted a partner who spoke her mind freely. The wedding took place 6 weeks later in the small church at the center of Ogden. Gabriel wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit, and carried wildflowers Isaac had picked from the meadow where they had shared their first picnic. Isaac looked impossibly handsome in his best suit, his blue eyes never leaving her face as she walked down the aisle. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When the minister asked if Gabriel promised to obey her husband, she and Isaac had already agreed on a modification. "I promise to love, honor, and respect Isaac as my equal partner in this marriage," Gabriel said firmly, and ignored the shocked gasps from some of the older attendees. "And I promise to love, honor, and respect Gabriel as my equal partner," Isaac responded, his voice strong and sure. "I promise to support her dreams, to value her opinions, and to never try to silence her voice." Mrs. Henderson looked scandalized, but Mr. Henderson, sitting beside his wife with Tommy on his other side, nodded approvingly. The boy had improved dramatically in his reading and had indeed visited Isaac's ranch, where he had been allowed to help feed the new cattle Isaac had purchased. Tommy now declared he wanted to be both a rancher and a teacher when he grew up, and refused to hear that these were contradictory goals. After the ceremony, there was a reception at the town hall with food donated by various community members. Gabriel was surprised by how many people came and how many offered genuine congratulations. Even some of those who had criticized her most harshly seemed to have softened their stance, perhaps recognizing that Isaac's public support lent her legitimacy in their eyes. It was frustrating that she needed a man's endorsement to be taken seriously, but Gabriel was pragmatic enough to accept the advantages it offered. "Congratulations, Miss Owens, or I suppose it is Mrs. Northwood now." Doc Morrison shook her hand warmly. "That was quite an unconventional ceremony." "I approved. Thank you, Doctor, and I plan to continue going by Gabriel Owens professionally. Isaac and I agreed it makes sense for the children and parents to keep using the name they know. Very practical. Your father would be proud of you, Gabriel. You have honored his memory by continuing his work and fighting for what he believed in." The compliment meant more to Gabriel than she could express. She had spent 3 years trying to fill her father's shoes, constantly worried she was falling short. Hearing that she had made him proud brought tears to her eyes. Isaac appeared at her side, sliding an arm around her waist with easy affection. "Are you all right, my love?" "Very all right, just happy." She leaned into him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence. "Dance with me." The musicians had struck up a waltz, and couples were taking to the floor. Isaac led her into the dance with surprising grace for such a tall man. Gabriel had never been particularly interested in dancing before, had always found it a tedious social obligation. But dancing with Isaac, moving together in perfect synchronization, felt different. It felt like a conversation without words, a physical manifestation of the partnership they had promised to build. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "That I am happier than I ever imagined I could be, that I found something I did not even know I was looking for." She looked up at him, not caring that they were surrounded by the entire town. "I love you, Isaac Northwood. I love you too, Gabriel, today, tomorrow, and every day after." They left the reception early, amid much teasing and laughter, and drove out to the ranch in Isaac's wagon. The house that had seemed comfortable when Gabriel visited before now felt like home. Isaac carried her over the threshold, a tradition he insisted on despite her laughing protests, and set her down gently in the front room. "Welcome home," he said softly. Gabriel looked around at the space that was now hers as much as his, at the books and furniture and small personal touches that made it a home rather than just a house. "It is perfect. You are perfect. This whole day has been perfect." "The day is not over yet," Isaac reminded her, and the look in his eyes made her heart race. Their wedding night was everything Gabriel had hoped for and more. Isaac was tender and patient, attentive to her needs and responses. There was no awkwardness, no sense of performing expected roles. Just two people who loved each other deeply, learning how to express that love in new and intimate ways. Afterward, Lying in Isaac's arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Gabriel felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had spent so many years building walls, protecting herself from disappointment and heartbreak. With Isaac, those walls had come down naturally, without her even realizing it was happening. He had simply proven, day after day, that he was worthy of her trust. "What are you thinking now?" Isaac asked, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. "That I am grateful. For you, for this, for everything." Gabriel propped herself up on one elbow to look at him properly. "Isaac, I know I am not always going to be easy to live with. I am stubborn and opinionated, and I do not compromise easily. I know. I would not want you any other way. But I want you to promise me something. If I ever become too much, if you ever start to regret choosing a wife who causes controversy and makes your life complicated, I want you to tell me. I want us to always be honest with each other, even when the truth is difficult." Isaac sat up, pulling her with him so they faced each other in the moonlight streaming through the window. "Gabriel, listen to me. You are never too much. Your strength and your convictions are not burdens. They are gifts. Yes, being married to you might sometimes be complicated. People might talk or disapprove. But I would rather have a complicated, interesting, meaningful life with you than a simple, boring, empty one without you." "You say that now," Gabriel began, but Isaac gently placed a finger on her lips. "I will say it every day for the rest of our lives if that is what it takes for you to believe me. You are not like other women, Gabriel, and that is exactly why I fell in love with you. I do not want someone who agrees with me all the time. I want someone who will challenge me, who will point out when I am being an idiot, who will make me think and grow and be better than I would be on my own. That is what a real partnership looks like." Gabriel kissed him then, pouring into it all the love and gratitude and hope she felt. When they finally broke apart, she whispered, "I believe you, and I promise to trust you, to give you the benefit of the doubt, and to never let fear make me push you away. That is all I ask." They made love again, slower this time, savoring each touch and kiss. Later, as they drifted toward sleep wrapped in each other's arms, Gabriel reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 2 months. She had gone from resigned spinsterhood to passionate marriage, from fighting alone to having a true partner by her side. It felt almost miraculous. The first months of marriage were an adjustment, as Gabriel had known they would be. She continued teaching, rising early to make the trip into town each day. Isaac insisted on driving her in the wagon whenever his ranch work allowed, and on the days he could not, she rode one of his horses. The arrangement worked well, though it required careful coordination and communication. The town slowly accepted their unconventional marriage, helped in large part by Isaac's growing reputation as a fair and hard-working rancher. He hired local men for various projects, paid them well, and treated them with respect. He attended town council meetings regularly and spoke up on various issues, always thoughtful and well-reasoned in his arguments. People began to see him as a valuable member of the community, and by extension, became more accepting of Gabriel's continued role as teacher despite her married status. Tommy Henderson continued to thrive in school, and other struggling students began to show improvement as well. Gabriel's teaching methods, which emphasized understanding over rote memorization and encouragement over punishment, were producing undeniable results. Even the most skeptical parents had to admit their children were learning more than they had under previous teachers. One evening in late fall, nearly 5 months after their wedding, Gabriel arrived home from school to find Isaac repairing a section of fence near the road. He waved when he saw her approaching, and she guided her horse over to him. "How was school today?" he asked, setting down his tools. "Challenging. We had a new student arrive, a girl named Sarah whose family just moved here from California. She is 13 and has barely been schooled at all. Her parents seem to think education is not important for girls. Gabriel dismounted, letting her horse crop grass while they talked. I am going to need to work with her separately to get her caught up, which means more hours after school. You are already working such long days, Isaac said, concern evident in his voice. I worry you are pushing yourself too hard. I know, but what else can I do? Sarah deserves an education just as much as any boy in that classroom. I cannot give up on her just because it is inconvenient. Isaac smiled, that warm expression that never failed to make Gabriel's heart skip. This is exactly what I mean about you being remarkable. You never take the easy path when you see someone who needs help. He paused, then added carefully, though I do want to make sure you are taking care of yourself as well. You have not been sleeping well lately, and you barely touched your breakfast this morning. Gabriel had noticed the same things, though she had been attributing them to stress and the changing seasons. But now that Isaac mentioned it, she realized there might be another explanation. Her monthly courses were late, something she had not thought much about given her irregular cycle. But combined with the fatigue and occasional nausea, especially in the mornings, it suggested a possibility that made her pulse quicken. Isaac, I think I might be pregnant. His eyes widened, hope and excitement warring with concern on his face. Are you certain? No, not certain. But the signs are there. I could visit Doc Morrison tomorrow to confirm. Gabriel, that is wonderful. Isaac swept her into his arms, spinning her around before setting her down carefully. If it is true, I mean, if you are happy about it. I am happy, Gabriel assured him, realizing it was true. She had always assumed she would never have children, had made her peace with that future. But the idea of having Isaac's child, of creating a family together, filled her with unexpected joy. Though I confess I am also terrified. What if I cannot balance teaching and motherhood? What if the council uses this as an excuse to replace me? Then we will figure it out together. Whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, we will handle them as partners. Isaac took her hands, his expression serious. But Gabriel, I want you to know something. Your happiness and health are more important to me than anything else. If continuing to teach becomes too much, if you need to step back for a while, that is fine. And if you decide teaching is what you need to keep doing, even with a baby, we will make that work too. This is your choice. I will support whatever you decide. Gabriel felt tears prick her eyes, moved by his absolute sincerity. Thank you for understanding that I might want both, for not assuming I will automatically give up my work. You have spent years proving you can do anything you set your mind to. I have no doubt you will be an excellent mother and an excellent teacher, in whatever combination makes sense for you. The visit to Doc Morrison the next day confirmed what Gabriel had suspected. She was indeed pregnant, about 3 months along based on the doctor's examination. The baby was due in the spring, probably late April or early May. You are healthy and strong, Doc Morrison assured her. I see no reason why you cannot continue your normal activities, including teaching, as long as you feel well enough. Though you will want to cut back on anything too strenuous in the later months. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your confidence. Gabriel, I am going to be honest with you. There will be people in this town who expect you to quit teaching now that you are expecting. They will say it is inappropriate or that you should focus entirely on preparing for motherhood. He leaned back in his chair, his weathered face serious. What you choose to do is entirely your business, but I want you to know that you have my support, whatever you decide. You are an excellent teacher, and losing you would be a genuine loss for this community. The endorsement from the respected doctor gave Gabriel confidence as she faced the inevitable questions and judgments. As word spread of her pregnancy, reactions ranged from genuine congratulations to thinly veiled disapproval. Mrs. Henderson made a point of telling Gabriel that no proper woman would continue working in her condition, and that she was setting a bad example for the female students. Gabriel responded politely but firmly. "I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Henderson, but I am perfectly healthy and capable of continuing my work. Many women throughout history have worked right up until their delivery, and I see no reason to be different. But what about your reputation? What will people think? They will think I am a dedicated teacher who takes her responsibilities seriously, and if they think anything else, that is their problem, not mine." Isaac, true to his word, supported her decision completely. He made sure she ate well and got enough rest, but never tried to restrict her activities or suggest she should stop working. When Gabriel began showing more obviously in her 4th and 5th months, he sewed a new skirt with extra room in the waistband and helped her adjust her wardrobe to remain comfortable and appropriate. The students were fascinated by Gabriel's growing belly, full of questions about babies and pregnancy. Gabriel answered honestly and age-appropriately, using it as an opportunity to teach basic anatomy and biology. Some parents complained, of course, arguing that such topics were not suitable for children. But Gabriel pointed out that understanding how life worked was educational and practical, and most parents grudgingly accepted her reasoning. Tommy Henderson, now reading at grade level and flourishing in his studies, appointed himself as Gabriel's official helper. He insisted on carrying her heavy bags, fetching water, and making sure she sat down regularly. It was endearing, if occasionally excessive. "Tommy, I am pregnant, not fragile," Gabriel laughed one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from lifting a stack of books. "I can still do most things normally." "I know, Miss Owens, but Mr. Northwood said I should help look after you, and I want to make sure I do a good job." Gabriel made a mental note to speak with Isaac about not turning her students into overprotective nursemaids. But she also appreciated the care behind the gesture, the way Isaac was creating a community of support around her, even when he could not be there himself. As winter settled over Ogden, bringing snow and cold temperatures, Gabriel found herself slowing down despite her best efforts. The walk from the wagon to the schoolhouse left her breathless, and standing for long periods made her back ache. She began sitting more while teaching, and restructured her lessons to require less physical movement. The students adapted well, and Gabriel was gratified to find that her teaching remained effective even with these modifications. Isaac was endlessly patient and supportive, rubbing her sore feet in the evenings and helping her find comfortable positions for sleeping as her belly grew. He built a cradle for the baby with his own hands, carving intricate designs into the wood and sanding it until it was smooth as silk. Gabriel would sometimes find him in the evening running his hands over the cradle, a look of wonder on his face. "Are you frightened?" she asked one such evening, coming to stand beside him. "About becoming a father, terrified," Isaac admitted. "What if I do it wrong?" "What if I am not good at it? You will be wonderful. Look at how good you are with Tommy and the other students. You have patience and kindness and genuine interest in helping them grow. Those are the most important qualities in a parent. I hope you are right." He placed his hand gently on her swollen belly, and they both felt the baby kick in response. "Hello in there, little one. This is your father. I promise to do my very best by you." Gabriel covered his hand with hers, overwhelmed by love for this man and the child they had created together. "We will figure it out together, Isaac, just like everything else." Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting to reveal the first green shoots pushing through the cold earth. Gabriel was enormous now, her belly so large she could barely see her feet. She had finally agreed to stop teaching in late March, just 6 weeks before the baby was due. The decision had been difficult, but she acknowledged that trying to manage 20 students while this uncomfortable and slow-moving was not practical. The town council had reluctantly agreed to hire a temporary replacement, a young man from Salt Lake City who would fill in until Gabriel was ready to return. She had made it absolutely clear that this was a temporary arrangement, and that she intended to resume her position after the baby was born. The council had not been thrilled, but Isaac's presence at the meeting and his calm, firm insistence on Gabriel's right to return had helped secure their grudging agreement. Now, Gabriel spent her days preparing for the baby, sewing tiny clothes and organizing the house to accommodate a newborn. She had more time to rest, which her body desperately needed, but she also felt restless without the structure and purpose that teaching provided. Isaac did his best to keep her entertained, reading to her in the evenings and bringing her interesting items from town. The baby came on a warm April evening, arriving with surprising speed after a labor that lasted only 6 hours. Doc Morrison barely made it in time, and Isaac held Gabriel's hand throughout, whispering encouragement and wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. When the baby finally emerged, red-faced and wailing, the doctor announced it was a boy. "A son," Isaac breathed, his eyes shining with tears. "Gabriel, we have a son." Doc Morrison cleaned the baby and wrapped him in a soft blanket before placing him in Gabriel's arms. She looked down at the tiny face, the closed eyes and miniature fingers, and felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it almost frightened her. "He is perfect," she whispered. "What will you name him?" the doctor asked, gathering his supplies. Gabriel and Isaac had discussed names extensively over the past months. They had narrowed it down to several options but had not made a final decision. Now, looking at their son, Gabriel knew exactly what his name should be. "Thomas," she said, glancing at Isaac for confirmation. "After my father, who believed girls should have the same education as boys, and whose legacy I have tried to honor." "Thomas Northwood," Isaac agreed, testing the name. "It is perfect. Hello, Thomas. Welcome to the world, son." The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and overwhelming. Thomas was a fussy baby, prone to crying for hours despite their best efforts to soothe him. Gabriel was grateful for Isaac's help, for the way he took over household tasks and cared for the baby so she could rest. They took turns walking Thomas around the house at night, rocking him and singing to him until he finally settled. "How do people do this with multiple children?" Gabriel asked one exhausted morning after a particularly difficult night. "Very carefully," Isaac replied with a tired smile. "Though I suppose they must get better at it with practice. We are still learning." Gabriel appreciated his optimism, though she privately wondered if she would ever feel competent as a mother. She loved Thomas desperately, but the reality of caring for an infant was so much harder than she had anticipated. The constant demands, the lack of sleep, the worry that she was doing everything wrong, it was overwhelming. But slowly, gradually, they found their rhythm. Thomas began sleeping for longer stretches. Gabriel learned to interpret his different cries and what each one meant. Isaac proved to be a natural father, patient and attentive, and completely unafraid to change diapers or clean up spit up. They figured it out together, just as they had promised. When Thomas was 3 months old, Gabriel began thinking seriously about returning to teaching. She missed it desperately, the structure, the intellectual challenge, the sense of purpose. She loved her son, but she also knew she needed more than just motherhood to feel fulfilled. "Are you certain?" Isaac asked when she raised the subject. "There is no rush. The temporary teacher can stay longer if you need more time. I am certain. I need this, Isaac. I need to use my mind to feel like I am contributing beyond our household. Thomas will be fine. We can hire someone to help care for him during the day, or I could bring him with me to the schoolhouse. Bringing him might be difficult once he starts crawling and getting into everything, Isaac pointed out practically. But I support whatever you decide. If you want to return to teaching, we will make it work. They hired Mrs. Chen's daughter, a responsible young woman named Lily who was saving money for her own future. Lily proved to be excellent with Thomas, patient and gentle, and Gabriel felt comfortable leaving her son in her care. Still, the first day back at school was harder than Gabriel had anticipated. She kept thinking about Thomas, worrying whether he was all right, whether he missed her. But once she stood in front of her students again, explaining arithmetic and history and literature, she felt a sense of rightness return. This was who she was: a teacher, an educator, someone who helped shape young minds. Being a mother had added to her identity, not replaced it, and she needed both roles to feel complete. The students welcomed her back enthusiastically, and even the temporary teacher admitted she had done an excellent job. The town slowly accepted that Gabriel was going to continue teaching despite being a mother, though not without ongoing grumbling from the more traditional residents. "It is unnatural," Mrs. Henderson complained loudly in the general store one day. "A mother's place is with her child, not teaching other people's children." Gabriel, who happened to be shopping for supplies, turned to face the older woman. "My son is well cared for, happy and healthy, and the children in my classroom are receiving an excellent education. I fail to see how my working is harming anyone. You are setting a bad example. Young girls are getting ideas that they can have both marriage and careers, and that simply is not how the world works. Perhaps that is not how the world works currently, Mrs. Henderson. But perhaps it could work that way if we were willing to challenge old assumptions and support women who want more than just one option." Gabriel gathered her purchases calmly. "The world is changing. We can either change with it or be left behind." She walked out with her head high, aware that she had likely made an enemy but unable to regret her words. They were true, and someone needed to say them. Isaac, as always, supported her completely. When people criticized Gabriel to him, he defended her firmly and without apology. Word spread through the community that Isaac Northwood was intensely proud of his wife, that he boasted about her teaching skills and her dedication. It was unusual enough to be remarked upon, but Isaac did not care what people thought. "You are brilliant," he told Gabriel one evening as they watched Thomas play on a blanket in the front room. The baby was 6 months old now, starting to sit up on his own and grabbing at everything within reach. "And I want everyone to know it. Even when people think you are strange for supporting me, especially then. Gabriel, we promise to be partners. That means celebrating each other's achievements, not hiding them to make other people comfortable." Thomas chose that moment to topple over, more surprised than hurt, and began to cry. Gabriel scooped him up, comforting him with practiced ease. Isaac watched them with an expression of such love and contentment that it made Gabriel's chest tight. "I never knew I could be this happy," she admitted. "I thought I had to choose between independence and love, between my work and a family. You showed me I could have both." "We showed each other," Isaac corrected. "You taught me that real strength means supporting the people you love to be their best selves, not trying to control or limit them." "We have made each other better, Gabriel. That is what the best partnerships do." The years that followed were full and rich, though not without challenges. Gabriel continued teaching, taking brief breaks when their second child was born 2 years after Thomas, a daughter they named Hope. And then, 3 years after Hope, Another daughter named Grace arrived. Each time, Gabriel returned to teaching after a few months, and each time the town's objections grew quieter as they saw that her children thrived despite their mother's unconventional choices. Isaac's ranch prospered, growing to become one of the most successful in the region. He hired fairly and paid well, earning a reputation as an excellent employer. He continued attending town council meetings and advocating for progressive policies, slowly changing minds through persistent, reasoned argument. Tommy Henderson grew up to attend university, something almost unheard of for a boy from a small Utah town. He credited Gabriel with inspiring his love of learning and wrote to her regularly throughout his studies. Other students followed similar paths, pursuing education and opportunities that might not have been available without Gabriel's influence. When Thomas was 7, Hope was 5, and Grace was 2, the town council finally acknowledged what everyone already knew. Gabriel Owens Northwood was an exceptional teacher who had transformed education in Ogden. They officially recognized her contributions at a special ceremony, and even Mrs. Henderson grudgingly admitted that Gabriel had done well by the community's children. "I suppose I may have been hasty in my judgments," Mrs. Henderson said stiffly, approaching Gabriel after the ceremony. "Your children seem well adjusted, and your students certainly are learning. Perhaps there is more than one way to be a proper woman after all." It was not a full apology, but Gabriel accepted it as progress. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I appreciate you saying that." Isaac, watching from nearby with Grace in his arms, winked at Gabriel. She smiled back, remembering the day they had met, when she had been fighting yet another battle against people's narrow expectations. She had never imagined finding someone who would not just accept her as she was, but actively celebrate it. That evening, after the children were finally asleep, Gabriel and Isaac sat together on their porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The night was cool and quiet, the kind of peaceful moment they both cherished after the chaos of raising 3 young children. "You ever regret it?" Gabriel asked. "Choosing such a complicated life. Marriage to me has not been easy or conventional." Isaac pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "Gabriel, my love, I have never regretted it for a single moment. Yes, our life has been complicated. Yes, we have faced criticism and judgment, but it has also been incredibly rich and meaningful. We have built something real together, a family, a community presence, a legacy of change. That matters more than taking the easy path." "I love you," Gabriel said simply, "for seeing me as I am, for wanting a partner who speaks her mind freely, and meaning it even when my mind disagreed with yours. I love you too, and I am grateful every day that you walked out of that general store at exactly the right moment for us to collide." He kissed the top of her head, a gesture of casual affection that still made her heart warm after years of marriage. "We have built a good life, you and I, and it is only going to get better." Gabriel leaned into him, content and peaceful in a way she had never thought possible. She thought about the town's initial resistance to her teaching, to her continued work after marriage, to her refusal to conform to expected roles. Much of that resistance had softened over the years, partly because of the undeniable results of her work, and partly because Isaac's unwavering support had forced people to reconsider their assumptions. Their children were growing up in a household where both parents contributed, where intelligence and hard work were valued regardless of gender, where speaking your mind was encouraged rather than punished. Thomas was already showing signs of his mother's intellectual curiosity and his father's steady determination. Hope was fearless and opinionated, never hesitating to share her thoughts. Grace was still too young to show clear personality traits, but Gabriel suspected she would be equally strong-willed. "You think we are raising them right?" Gabriel asked, voicing a worry that occasionally kept her awake at night. "The world is not always kind to people who challenge convention. Are we preparing them for the reality they will face? We are raising them to be strong, capable, and true to themselves," Isaac replied firmly. "Yes, they will face challenges. Yes, people will sometimes judge them for not fitting into expected molds. But they will also have the confidence and skills to handle those challenges, and they will know they have parents who support them unconditionally. That is the best gift we can give them." The sound of crying drifted from inside the house, Grace waking from a nightmare, most likely. Gabriel started to rise, but Isaac gently pressed her back down. "I will go," he said. "You have been on your feet all day teaching. Rest here for a few more minutes." She watched him disappear inside, heard his low voice soothing their youngest daughter, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude for the life they had built together. It was not perfect, no life was, but it was theirs, shaped by their choices and their values, and it was good. As the years continued to pass, Gabriel saw the impact of her work spread beyond her individual students. Young women in Ogden began pursuing education more seriously, knowing they had Gabriel as an example of what was possible. The town council, under Isaac's persistent influence, began considering women's perspectives more often, even if they still did not allow women to serve as official members. Change was slow, but it was happening. When Thomas was 12, he asked Gabriel a question that had clearly been bothering him. "Mother, some of the boys at school say it is strange that you still teach. They say their mothers would never do such a thing. Why are you different?" Gabriel set aside the papers she had been grading and gave her son her full attention. "Do you think it is strange that I teach?" Thomas considered this seriously, a trait he had inherited from both parents. "No, I think it is part of who you are, like how father ranches. It would be strange if you stopped, like something important was missing." "That is exactly right. Teaching is not just what I do, it is part of who I am. Just like being your mother is part of who I am. I need both to feel complete." She reached out and ruffled his hair, a gesture he was getting too old for but still tolerated. "Some people believe women should only be mothers and wives, that we should not have interests or work outside the home. But I believe women are capable of being many things at once, just like men. Your father is a rancher, but he is also a husband and father and community member. Why should I have fewer roles available to me?" "That makes sense," Thomas said slowly. "I never thought about it that way before. I just knew you were different from other mothers, but I did not realize why." "Different is not always bad," Gabriel told him. "Sometimes different is just honest. I am being true to who I am, rather than pretending to be someone I am not. And I hope I am teaching you and your sisters that being true to yourselves is more important than fitting in." Thomas hugged her then, fierce and brief in the way of adolescent boys. "I think you are the best teacher in Utah, Mother, even if some people do not appreciate it." Gabriel blinked back tears, moved by her son's loyalty and understanding. Moments like these made all the struggles worthwhile. As their children grew older and more independent, Gabriel and Isaac found new rhythms to their life. The ranch was well established now, successful enough to hire additional help, which gave Isaac more time for other pursuits. He became increasingly involved in territorial politics, advocating for education funding and women's rights. His voice, coming from a respected rancher and family man, carried weight that similar arguments from women were often denied. Gabriel continued teaching, becoming something of an institution in Ogden. Students who had learned from her grew up and sent their own children to her classroom. She refined her methods, incorporating new educational theories, and always pushing her students to think critically rather than simply memorize facts. The school under her leadership became known throughout the territory as one of the finest, and other communities began requesting her advice on improving their own educational systems. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Gabriel with a gift, funding to expand the school and hire an additional teacher, freeing Gabriel to focus more on older students and advanced subjects. The money came from the ranch's profits, and Isaac presented it with a simple statement: "You have poured your heart into this community for decades. Let me help you do even more." Gabriel was speechless, overwhelmed by the gesture and what it represented. "Isaac, this is too much. The ranch needs that money. The ranch is doing fine, and this is an investment in our community's future. Besides," he added with a smile, "I am tired of watching you exhaust yourself trying to teach students at 7 different levels simultaneously. You deserve help." They hired a young woman named Clara Richardson, fresh from a teaching college in Salt Lake City, full of enthusiasm and modern ideas. Gabriel mentored her carefully, passing along decades of experience while also being open to Clara's fresh perspectives. The partnership worked beautifully, and the expanded school served students even better than before. Thomas grew into a thoughtful young man who decided to pursue law, wanting to fight for justice through the legal system. Hope became passionate about medicine, determined to become a doctor despite the significant barriers women faced in that field. Grace, the youngest, showed talent in art and music, dreaming of studying in a big city. Gabriel and Isaac supported all of these dreams, providing encouragement and what financial assistance they could. "We are raising children who believe they can do anything," Isaac observed one evening as they discussed Hope's plans to apply to medical school. "That is your doing, Gabriel. You showed them a woman can be whatever she chooses to be." "It is our doing," Gabriel corrected. "You showed them that men can support and celebrate women's achievements rather than feeling threatened by them. That is equally important." As Utah moved toward statehood in the 1890s, Gabriel and Isaac both became involved in the suffrage movement. Gabriel spoke at meetings and wrote articles arguing for women's right to vote. Isaac used his political connections to advocate for inclusive policies. When Utah was granted statehood in 1896 and women's suffrage was included in the state constitution, Gabriel wept with joy. "We did it," she said, holding the newspaper that announced the news. "Women will be able to vote, to have a real voice in how we are governed." Isaac pulled her into his arms, equally moved. "You did it. You and women like you, who never stopped fighting for equality even when it seemed impossible. I am so proud of you, Gabriel." She had never stopped fighting, even when it would have been easier to give in. And now, at 52 years old, she was seeing the fruits of that perseverance. The world was changing, slowly but unmistakably, and she had played a part in that change. Their children grew up and pursued their dreams. Thomas became a lawyer working on civil rights cases. Hope, after years of struggle and determination, became one of the first female doctors in Utah. Grace moved to San Francisco to study art, making a name for herself as a talented painter. Gabriel and Isaac were intensely proud of all three, knowing they had raised children who were strong, capable, and committed to making the world better. As they aged, Gabriel and Isaac remained devoted partners. Isaac's hair turned silver, and Gabriel's once dark hair followed suit. They moved a bit slower, tired more easily, but their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened with time, enriched by decades of shared experiences, challenges overcome together, and dreams achieved. On a warm summer evening in 1910, Gabriel and Isaac sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. They were both in their 70s now, officially retired, though Gabriel still occasionally tutored struggling students, and Isaac still kept a hand in ranch operations. Their children visited regularly, bringing grandchildren who filled the house with noise and laughter. "You remember that first day?" Gabriel asked, her hand in Isaac's as it had been for over 3 decades of marriage, "when we collided outside the general store?" "I remember thinking you were the most magnificent woman I had ever seen," Isaac replied, his voice still warm despite the years. "All fire and conviction, ready to take on the world. I fell in love with you in that moment, though I did not realize it yet. You told Mrs. Henderson you wanted a partner who could speak her mind freely. You actually meant it. Do you know how rare that was? How rare it still is?" "I wanted an equal, Gabriel. Someone who would challenge me and inspire me and make life an adventure. I found all that and more in you." He squeezed her hand gently. "We have built a good life together, changed some minds, raised remarkable children, made the world a little bit better than we found it." "We did," Gabriel agreed, her voice soft with emotion. "And we did it together as true partners." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the Utah sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The mountains rose majestically in the distance, unchanged by the passage of time. But the world around them had transformed dramatically from those early days in 1878 when they first met. Women could vote now. They could own property, pursue education, enter professions once closed to them. The changes were incomplete, the battles far from over, but progress was undeniable. Gabriel thought about all the students she had taught over the decades, the lives she had touched, the minds she had shaped. She thought about her own children and grandchildren, growing up in a world with more possibilities than she had known. She thought about Isaac, who had stood beside her through every challenge, who had never once asked her to be less than she was. "I would do it all again," she said suddenly. "Every fight, every struggle, every moment of doubt. If it all led to this, to us, to the life we built, I would do it all again in a heartbeat." "So would I," Isaac said simply. "Loving you has been the greatest adventure of my life, Gabriel, and I would not change a single moment." They remained on the porch until the stars emerged, bright and clear in the darkening sky. Inside, they could hear their daughter Hope arriving with her family, the grandchildren's excited voices calling for them. Life continued, rich and full, surrounded by the love they had built and the legacy they would leave. Gabriel stood slowly, Isaac rising with her, and they walked inside together, hand in hand as they had been for decades. The house was full of noise and warmth. 3 generations gathered to share a meal and stories. Gabriel looked around at the faces of her children and grandchildren, at Isaac smiling as he scooped up his youngest granddaughter, and felt a profound sense of contentment. She had been told her entire life that she was too opinionated, too outspoken, too difficult. She had been warned that no man would want a woman who could not learn her place. But Isaac had wanted exactly that, a partner who spoke her mind freely, who challenged him, who refused to be anything but authentically herself. And together, they had proven that real love, real partnership, meant celebrating each other's strengths rather than trying to diminish them. As the evening wore on and the family gathered around the dinner table, Hope raised her glass in a toast. "To Mother and Father," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "who taught us that love means supporting each other to be our best selves, and that partnership means standing together even when the world says you should not. Thank you for showing us what true equality looks like." "Hear, hear," the family chorused, and Gabriel felt tears sting her eyes. Isaac looked at her across the table. his blue eyes still as bright and loving as they had been 32 years ago when he first told her he wanted a partner who spoke her mind freely. She smiled at him, pouring all her love and gratitude into that look, and he smiled back, understanding everything she could not say in front of their gathered family. They had built something beautiful together, a marriage based on mutual respect and genuine equality, a family raised to value truth and justice, a legacy of change that would outlive them both. It had not always been easy. They had faced criticism, judgment, and countless challenges. But they had faced them together, as true partners, and that had made all the difference. As the evening drew to a close and the family began to disperse, Isaac and Gabriel found themselves alone again in their quiet home. They moved through their nighttime routine with the ease of long practice, comfortable in the silence that came from knowing each other so completely that words were often unnecessary. Lying in bed that night, Gabriel's head resting on Isaac's shoulder as it had for 3 decades, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that first collision outside the general store to this moment of profound peace, they had traveled a remarkable path together. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Isaac asked, his arm tightening around her. "For seeing me, for valuing me, for never trying to change me, for being exactly the partner I needed even when I did not know I needed one." "Gabriel, you have it backward. I am the one who should be thanking you. You made me a better man, a better father, a better human being. Loving you taught me what real strength looks like, what real partnership means. You are the greatest blessing of my life." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the love they had built and nurtured over decades. The world outside continued to change, slowly moving toward the equality and justice they had fought for. Their work was not finished, such work never is, but they had contributed their part, lived their truth, and proved that a woman who speaks her mind freely and a man who celebrates that are a powerful combination. The years continued to pass gently. Gabriel and Isaac grew older with grace, surrounded by family and the community they had helped shape. When Gabriel finally retired from teaching at 75, the town held a celebration in her honor, recognizing her nearly 50 years of service. Former students came from across the state to pay tribute, sharing stories of how she had changed their lives, opened their minds, and inspired them to dream bigger than their circumstances suggested was possible. Isaac stood beside her throughout the celebration, his pride evident in every word, every glance. Even in their 80s, they remained devoted partners, still taking their evening walks when weather permitted, still sitting on their porch watching sunsets, still finding joy in each other's company. When Isaac passed away peacefully at 87, Gabriel grieved deeply but also felt grateful for the years they had shared. He had been her partner in every sense of the word, supporting her dreams while pursuing his own, celebrating her victories and sharing her struggles. Their marriage had been everything she had never dared hope for, a true partnership built on mutual respect, genuine equality, and abiding love. Gabriel lived 2 more years after Isaac's death, spending time with her children and grandchildren, writing her memoirs to preserve the lessons she had learned. When she passed away at 89, surrounded by family, her final words were about Isaac and the life they had built together. At her funeral, Hope read from Gabriel's memoirs, sharing her mother's words with the gathered community. "I was told I was too opinionated, that no man would want a woman who spoke her mind so freely. But then I met Isaac, who said he wanted exactly that, a partner who would be honest, who would challenge him, who would stand beside him as an equal. Together, we proved that real love does not ask you to be less than you are." It celebrates you for being exactly who you are and helps you become even more. That is the legacy I hope to leave. That women can be strong and opinionated and outspoken, and that this makes them not difficult but remarkable. And that men can choose to support and celebrate strong women, and that this makes them not weak but wise. The words echoed through the church, a final testament to a woman who had spent her life fighting for equality and proving that change was possible. Gabriel Owens Northwood had been too opinionated for some, but for Isaac, and for countless others she had touched, she had been exactly right. Her legacy lived on in her children, in her students, in the policies she had helped shape, and in the example she had set for future generations. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Gabriel and Isaac found each other again, ready to continue their adventure together in whatever form the next journey might take. They had proven in life that real partnership transcends societal expectations and conventional limitations. Their love had been a revolutionary act, a daily choice to honor and celebrate each other as equals. That love, that partnership, that unwavering commitment to supporting each other's dreams and voices, that was their true legacy, and it would endure long after they were gone.